This saucy braised noodle dish is so meaty in flavor. It's almost got a Marmite flavor to it. It's a Beijing saucy noodles or jjajangmian. It's actually quite easy to make, and I'm going to show you. There's, a base of certain ingredients that you might need to find in an Asian supermarket, and I'll talk you through those as we go. So the ginger, roughly chopped. Spring onion, also roughly chopped to go along with the ginger. Done it in sort of 1/2 centimeter pieces. That's all I have to cut for base flavor, and then I've got this chunk of pork shoulder here with the fat still on, and actually that's really important. We need the fat for this dish. I'm going to take that fat now, and I'll start the wok off with the fat in there, with the wok cold. We're using the lard to create the grease for this dish. So just rough dices of your pork fat are fine, and they can go, as I say, into or straight into your cold wok. With the rest of the pork shoulder, you just want to dice it in a similar sort of size. I don't like it too small. You want a nice bite on each piece of pork. So I start this off from cold, this wok, because I want to bring as much of that fat or that lard out from the skin or the fat of the pork as possible before I then start to layer the flavor into this dish. So once your pork sort of has released all its fat, then it'll start to go crispy and stop spitting at you. It's kind of nice not to have lard spitting in your face for too long, but also you can see the amount of fat that's come out of the pork skin. In fact, so much has come out, I'm pretty sure I don't need all of that to make this braised pork dish. Just remove the crispy fat pieces. I mean, you could throw them away, but they look pretty tasty to me, so I'm going to use those to top the dish. Why not? And then I'm going to take any excess lard that I don't want to sort of cook with out, and I can use that as I go for this dish or for other cooking too. So now the fat is out, we're going to flavor or start to layer flavor into that fat on this sort of cast iron thick wok. Got some cinnamon stick, star anise, fennel seeds, and bay leaf. 4 out of the 5 key components to Chinese 5-spice. Low heat right now because I don't want those spices to burn. Then just push those to the back after about 30 seconds, allowing space for my ginger and spring onion. Still on a low heat. I like this nice and controlled wok cooking for once. Smells incredible. I love the smell of fennel seeds hitting a hot oil. I'm gonna whack the heat up now to a sort of medium to high heat. Push all my spices to the back so that there's space for the rest of my pork. And then on a medium to high heat, your pork goes in. I'm going to spread that pork out well into the wok, and then bring your spices roughly over the top so that they don't burn. Now you want to seal that pork round on a high heat. So turning the heat up 1 to 2 minutes on each side. So I'm trying to get a good amount of color around each chunk of pork before I start to sort of add any more flavor into this. I'm almost there with the color. And so whilst that's happening, I'll talk you through the sauces. And this is really, like, there are very few ingredients in this. I've got 2 types of soybean paste. The first one is just a soybean paste, so salted soybean. And you can see it's got this sort of almost coarse soybean grain to it. About 1.5 tablespoons of the salty soybean paste goes into this. The second soybean paste is what we call sweet sauce, Tim Zhang in Cantonese. About 3 tablespoons of sweet sauce, which is sweetened soybean paste, which tends to be, as you can see, a lot smoother than the soybean paste. 2 teaspoons of soft brown sugar, and then give that a mix, and you'll get this instant deep dark brown color around the pork, and it'll start to caramelize quite quickly because they're quite thick sauces. 1.5 tablespoons of light soy sauce, and that will just thin it out ever so slightly and add some saltiness. Still on a high heat here, but I've got some chicken stock nearby me, and I'm just going to top this up now with chicken stock to a point where all of that pork is covered in liquid. Give that a good stir around. Still at this point on a high heat, so that you can lift any flavor off the bottom of the wok. Once it's vigorously boiling, turn the heat down to medium-low heat. Let it simmer, most probably for about 15 to 20 minutes at least, if not half an hour. What you're trying to do is reduce that sauce right down until it becomes really nice and caramelized again, while still being saucy enough to then pour over my noodles. Really, you can use whatever type of wheat noodle you like for this. These are dried, handmade noodles, and I'm just going to boil them for about 2 to 3 minutes. Meanwhile, my sauce and the pork is looking absolutely delicious, starting to caramelize nicely now. And that's had about 20 minutes or so. So the noodles have had about 3 to 4 minutes. And you can see the caramelization of that soybean paste sauce. Look at that. Just wonderfully simple to make. And it's quite a quick braise, this. 20 to 30 minutes. A few of these crispy pieces that help to make our lard. Some spring onion. My Beijing jjiajang mian, saucy noodles. It's important with a dish like this to give it a good sort of mix through. All that sauce will wrap around the noodles. And so much flavor in that soybean sauce, but then also with the added whole spices, from that 5-spice mix. Oh, just delicious. What it is about these ribs is they're so Moorish. They've got this distinct sweet and sour flavor. The ribs take in a sweet aroma of star anise, cinnamon, those sort of classic Chinese 5-spice whole spices. First things first, I'm going to put quite a lot of ginger into this. So you want nice fine slices of ginger. You can see that's plenty of ginger. Half for my poaching and the other half for later on. Some garlic. Again, you can use a fair amount of garlic. You know, we can flavor the poaching liquid with some pretty much whole cloves of garlic and just pop them in there. If you want to bash them a little, just to open up flavor, you can. And then a few cloves for the braising stage as well. With the braising garlic, just a rough chop will do. And that can go alongside your sliced ginger. And then you want a good sort of 4 or 5 spring onions. Rough chunks of spring onion. Try and keep it on the table. You're going to use half for your braising, half for your poaching. We've noticed quite a lot of comments in one of our videos about me using garlic skins and onion skins to flavor stock. And people are quite averse to it, but actually there's a lot of flavor in your garlic skins, which is why I'm keeping the skins on the garlic for my poaching liquid. So I'm going to start poaching the pork ribs in a nice sort of aromatic stock. So you want to get your ginger in first, and you want to sear it nicely for a good sort of minute or so before you get your garlic and spring onion in. Right now we're just sort of flavoring the oil before I get the rest of the spices in. Once your ginger's sort of starting to brown, then you can get your star anise, bay leaves, and then your cinnamon stick. This one's pretty huge, so I'm going to break that up a little. And then just give that a stir, and pretty much immediately you'll get this sort of hit of that sweet aroma from those spices. I'm going to get my liquid in a second once my ginger has got that nice golden brown colour around the edge. Next up, we're going to pour a whole load of Shaoxing rice wine into this hot pan, and that should just lift all the sort of sweetness and anything that's sort of stuck to the bottom of the pan. Straight away, you get this hit of rice wine. I'm going to put about 2 to 3 tablespoons of light soy into that as well, and then that'll come up to a boil quite quickly. So I'm going to add a whole load of chicken stock into here, bring that to a boil, and then I'm going to add my pork ribs. My pork ribs, I've actually asked the butchers to cut this sort of almost bite size. You don't have to do this, but this is sort of the more traditional way, so you can have like one piece at a time, you know, quite easily, and you can share it out nicely. You know, you could just get normal pork ribs, cut, you know, individually, one piece at a time. That works too. Sometimes, like if you are sort of a traditional Chinese mum, then you would definitely blanch your pork ribs first in just water for about 3 or 4 minutes, take them out, give them a quick wash, and then put them into this liquid. But for me, to be honest, we're poaching this, and then we're going to put this in, we're going to cook this into a braising liquid anyway later on. So I'll give them a quick wash and clean in between the poaching and the braising. So we're going to bring that to a boil, and then down to simmer for 45 minutes. So next up, you've got loads of time because, you know, whilst it's poaching, you don't really have to do too much more. But I've got my sort of main ingredient here, my Qingqiang black vinegar. And it's a rice vinegar that is made from a black rice husk. Got some dark soy, so there's about 4 tablespoons of dark soy sauce in there. And that will help to really caramelize this sauce, along with some more Shaoxing rice wine. That's so that when it hits the wok, you get this sort of immediate aroma of the rice wine. And then this stuff here, which I'll leave till actually cooking in the wok, that's rock sugar. Kind of looks almost crystally. And what we want for this is for the rock sugar to melt into the sauce and create this really lovely syrupy texture. So these pork ribs had a good amount of time. Actually, I've gone for over an hour. A minimum of 45 minutes, and they'll get really nice and succulent. In fact, I'll show you now how soft this is. You can literally, it will fall off the bone, and with a spoon, you'll be able to cut through it. At this point, you could just sieve this out. Don't waste the stock. Use that for soup or something like that, anything on the side. But we're gonna make the sauce in the wok, and we're gonna start to finish this. I'm gonna just add a little bit of oil to my wok to sear my fresh ginger, garlic, and spring onion. Ginger in. And remember, all these flavors have gone into the poaching liquid already, so pork would have taken in quite a lot of that flavor from that stock, and it's almost like the poaching is the marinating process. Sear that well. Once it starts to brown, Then you can add your spring onion and your garlic chunks. Fold that through. You don't want your garlic to burn, so you're looking at about 30 seconds to a minute of just stir frying that. Your wok will still look and be pretty hot, so just go careful, but you're going to pour your sauce around over the top of those spices. Now lift all the sort of ginger and spring onion garlic oil off the bottom of the wok. Now bring it up to a boil, and we'll go for one of these sort of chunks of rock sugar first to start to melt that through. Once your rock sugar's been in there for about a minute, then you should be able to just sort of crack it open just to allow it to melt a little bit quicker. It's important to keep stirring this sauce through so it doesn't burn around the edges. Then you want to get your ribs into that caramelizing sauce. And I don't mind if I've got a few of the herbs and spices sort of finding their way into this either. You know, it's all part and parcel of the same dish. My ribs there, nice and succulent. I'm going to soak up that braising liquid over the next sort of 5-10 minutes of just bubbling that sauce away and stirring it through gently. I'm just folding from underneath so that every rib gets a good bit of that sweet sour flavour. My mouth is watering. It's a type of dish that you want to guard for your life and not let the cameraman close to. Sweet, tint of sour, the unique flavour of the Xinjiang black vinegar. That is amazing. What's great about it is the subtle flavour from the poaching of all of those things in that poaching liquid really sort of penetrated meat. That is awesome. This well-balanced, fruity, sweet and sour sauce, natural flavors from the plums and the tomatoes and everything in there. It's sweet and sour pork. And we're starting with essentially kind of making our own plum sauce. So I've got these beautiful red plums here. With your plums, de-seed, it's best to cut round the middle part and then just twist that round to then sort of get the rest of the seed out. And the rest of the seed can just sort of use a little teaspoon to prise out. So these plums, super red. You can see the inside, absolutely beautiful. Now, depending on how ripe they are, they might be more sweet or sour than from one to another. So, you know, we're gonna blitz this up and kind of make a juice or plum juice out of these plums. I want that to sieve through just so it collects any extra sort of larger bits of skin. And then whilst that is dripping into the bowl, I can blitz up my tomatoes. And then we'll add the tomato juice to that plum juice. Just let that drip in, and then you can prepare the rest whilst that's working itself. Next, for sweet, we've got some sugar, which we can use, and I will use, but also we've got this stuff here, and this is a hawthorn berry, kind of concentrated, jammy, sweet. If you can't find this, you could use types of jam. Any types of fruity jam will work. This is primarily what I'm going to create the sweet for my sweet and sour for in the sauce. Now you can see my kind of smoothie of the tomato and plum. Pour that into there and then bring that to heat on a medium heat. Now it's a great time to talk about our sponsors, Neff, who've kindly sponsored this video. I'm cooking this on induction, and this will come up to heat incredibly quickly. But the beauty of the induction hob here is that when I need to change it, it will turn up or down really quickly, and it kind of just works perfectly for cooking a lovely sauce like this. You can see it's taken about 15 seconds to come to a boil. My hawthorn, or my jammy sort of concentrate, is going to go into your plum and tomato mix. I'm going to go for 2 first, and then have a little taste to see whether I've got that nice balance of sweet and sour. This has still got quite a lot of sour in it, so I'm going to go for more of this hawthorn concentrate. I'm going to taste that again for sweet sour. And absolutely, I'm getting sour. So now I'm going to add a bit of sugar to this to get that balance of sweet sour right. As I said, we've got measurements in the recipe here for you guys, but every fruit will be more sweet or sour than the other. So you guys taste test as you go. At the moment, all I'm tasting is sweet and sour, which you'd think, oh, that's all you need. But for good Chinese food to be right, it needs to have a balance of sweet, sour, savory, salty. So I'm going to put a bit more savory into this and saltiness. And that's going to come from my light soy. I'm going to put a tablespoon of light soy in. I've also got some rice vinegar in here. I'm going to use this just a tad to accentuate the initial hit of sour that you get from the plums themselves. Now the last thing I'm going to add to this is a dash of dark soy, and that will just deepen all that colour, that red colour even more. My natural sweet and sour sauce is done. Next up, I'm going to prepare the rest of my ingredients for the stir fry and the marinated meat. So we've got plenty of time now. Just to set the rest of the stir fry up. Just going to go for chunks of everything. And just set up my wok clock of ingredients. So if you don't know, you just started following us, the wok clock is a nice easy way, my round plate, starting at 12 o'clock with my first ingredient that goes into the wok, and then following round with the rest. Probably only need about half a pepper. Again, similar sized chunks will do. Rings of pineapple that will follow suit. And this lovely, colourful plate is set, ready to go. Got a couple of lemons here we can use for garnish or a little squeeze over the top at the end. Just because I'm using, fresh ingredients for this, it'll just work nicely with that fruitiness. And so, lastly, onto the pork. I've got pork, shoulder steaks or loin will work. Now, don't go too small with the chunks, nice sort of chunky chunks. The marinade, really easy. I've got some ginger and garlic finely chopped up. A good tablespoon or so of light soy. About a teaspoon of sesame oil. And then give that a good mix through. Just crack an egg into there. And then get that egg mixed around too before you batter this up. We're going for a dry, dusty white corn flour or corn starch batter. And that uses a lot of corn flour. I've got my oil on a really high heat. I'm going to double fry this because I want it to go super crispy. Check that oil is hot. I'm using wooden chopsticks here just to see if it fizzes. If my oil fizzes with anything wooden, then we're at about 180 degrees C. Just shake off any sort of excess flour, sort of clumps, and then straight in, nice and carefully, and then just push into that meat to separate those pieces out in the oil so that when they're sizzling away, they all get that oil sort of heating up or sealing the meat and that batter immediately. And this looks super crispy already, but I want to get it even crispier, which is what the double fry will do. So the pork on the first fry has had about 2 to 3 minutes of deep frying. And on second fry, only really needs about a minute and it'll come out really super crispy. So now's a great time to talk about our sponsors Neff again. With this wok hob here, the Neff wok hob is awesome, perfect for a round bottom wok like this, where it's just gonna sort of create that wok hay, that sort of wok air for me to maneuver around the wok very quickly to finish off this sweet and sour. Much like any other sweet and sour or any other sort of saucy, crispy dish, this part happens super quick. A bit of oil around the edge, not too much. It's good to use the clean oil for that. And then we're gonna get your onions in first, which is 12 o'clock on my wok clock. Quite a lot of smoke here, so just flick that through to maneuver that wok's air around the wok and they just get a nice bit of char around the pieces of onion. Peppers in, again, allow those to kind of blister a little in the wok before you move it around too much, and then give it a quick wok toss. I want to get a bit of char on my pineapple if I can, so I'm going to just add a bit of oil around the edge, and then my pineapple is going to go in. And again, almost allow it to continue smoking. Get your extractor fans on, ready. Bring your onions over the top of the pineapple, not moving that pineapple around too much yet, until it catches a little and kind of caramelizes around the edges. Each time I'm flicking it around, I'm allowing that pineapple to catch a little bit more. Now, my lovely hawthorn berry natural sweet and sour sauce is going to come in. My wok is smoking hot all the way around, and I'm going to pour that sauce, probably a good couple of ladlefuls of sauce over the top. That is seriously hot, that wok. Bring that to a vigorous boil before your meat goes in. Meat in. I'm going to go double-handed here because there's a lot. Flick that through. Woo! Hot stuff. And then straight out. Restaurant style, old school way, sweet and sour pork. So the colour of this is what stands out. You know, you can really see that plum colour that we started with, that natural colouring from the... And it really is different. Natural sweet and sour flavours from all that fruit in there. A different way to make a sweet and sour pork.